So mean bees are always annoying, no matter if you're a commercial beekeeper, a sideline beekeeper, a small scale beekeeper. They're never fun. They're always annoying. And so there's it's a common question, right? Why are my bees being mean, especially if they weren't previously mean? And so and you see this a lot where a hive was nice and gentle, and then it seemed like out of nowhere they became aggressive. That's a hard one. There's a lot of different possible answers. So I'm gonna go two routes. If they've always been mean, if they're mean every time you open the hive, no matter what's going on, and they always have been, it's pretty good chance it's just genetics. You've just got genetically more aggressive bees, and you see an incredible range of defensive behavior in European bees. They don't have to be Africanized bees to be mean. I mean, I've seen incredibly mean European bees. So that you see a huge range. If they're always mean, always have been, it's just genetics. To fix that, you're going to have to requeen the hive. Now, if they haven't always been mean and they have suddenly become mean, there's a handful of things to keep in mind. One big thing is what's going on with the honey flow. If bees tend to be a little calmer when there's a honey flow, when it's May or June and they're bringing in tremendous amounts of honey, uh, all day, every day, they're kind of too busy to bother you. And those foragers, which the older foragers tend to be more aggressive, they're out and about gathering nectar instead of hanging around the hive. Once that honey flow ends and it gets hot and it gets dry, those foragers don't have anything else to do but come after you. And so they're just kind of hanging out there in the front of the hive, um, waiting for you to come take a look. So once the honey flow ends, it starts getting hotter outside, you definitely see a difference in the bee's temperament. Time of day makes a difference. Again, thinking back to those more defensive foragers, they tend to be hanging out around the hive first thing in the morning and late in the evening versus the middle of the day when they're out foraging. So early in the morning, late in the evening, they can be a little more defensive, especially when there isn't a honey flow. If the hive's being disturbed frequently, so if you're bumping it with a lawnmower, they're going to be defensive. If they're doing drilling with a back, or they're working with a backhoe around it or something, and any loud vibrations, noise, etc., will make the bees aggressive. Another factor is also just um, are they being fed or not? Consistently fed bees that have plenty of food tend to be a little calmer. So there's a lot of different things that go into what's going on with the bees, and so the big thing is if they are being defensive, try, and they weren't before, try inspecting a different time of day. Try feeding them, see if that calms them down. Smoker is huge too. Make sure you're using plenty of smoke. If you're not using your smoke well or not enough smoke, they're going to be defensive. So use plenty of smoke. So do some trial and error. And we've certainly got some longer videos on our YouTube channel about this topic that kind of go through it even more thoroughly. But do some trial and error and see if you can, find times of day or methods of working them that they remain calmer. And if you can, it's not genetics; it's just circumstantial or environmental. If none of that matters and they're still being aggressive, and they're being aggressive consistently every time you go in them, even if they weren't before, there's a decent chance that they requeen themselves. And that new queen has more aggressive genetics. You mated with some more aggressive drones, and eventually you might need to requeen the hive. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point. If it often happens in the late summer. I always tell folks, if you can, if you can bear it, just wait a couple months, give them 2 or 3 months. And if they're consistently aggressive for 2 or 3 months, probably time to requeen. But you may just find that once the season changes or once the weather changes, they calm back down. But if they're aggressive over that long period of time, probably time to requeen the hive.